Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots. Bootlegger Shields, Death, Search, Pests, and Fossils. Bootlegger Shields, Death, Search, Pests, and Fossils. I'm a useful idiot, and today I'm going to talk about how much intelligence is too much. And I think this is important because I seem to recall that when 9/11 happened, one of the excuses they gave for the immense security failure, I want to point that out again, an immense security failure for all you Benghazi fans out there, biggest security failure in U.S. history. Well, one of the excuses they gave for it was the fact that we had all these intelligence agencies, and they all had their own turf battles, and they just couldn't coordinate the information. So even though we had all these warnings that there was an attack coming, that they would be using airplanes to drive them into buildings, all this was known ahead of time, but apparently didn't make it to the top because of all this inefficiency in our intelligence community. So here we are, 10 years later, 10 years plus, and I'm looking at a report that came out from the Washington Post back in 2010, and they had a three-part series on the post-9/11 intelligence industry, and it brought up some startling facts. And this is a great example of why we can't have the government fix problems, because their idea of fixing a problem is creating another giant bureaucracy, and the intelligence community is no exception. So the people that did the report pointed out that this intelligence apparatus is so large and so unwieldy and so secretive that no one knows how much money it costs, how many people it employs, how many programs exist within it, or exactly how many agencies do the work. So let me remind you, they said that we needed to be more efficient and consolidate these intelligence agencies because the CIA and the FBI and everybody else was crossing their wires back then. So what do? We make the system about 100 times larger, and with that size, certainly doesn't come any more efficiency. We've had a couple of so-called terrorist attacks that weren't thwarted, and most all the other so-called terrorist attacks, domestic terrorist attacks, and domestic terror plans that have occurred in the United States in the last 10 years are all FBI and CIA entrapment cases. They're hardly terrorists. They're just a bunch of enticed losers wanting some fame, some glory, and some money. But anyway, the brutal details about the intelligence community, let's get down to these numbers. They're pretty shocking. There are 1,271 government organizations that have to do with the intelligence apparatus. And on top of that, there's 1,931 private companies that are part of this intelligence community. So there's over 3,000 organizations already that are all supposedly dealing with intelligence issues. These are spread across 10,000 locations across the United States, employing 854,000 people that have top security clearance. That's just 900,000 people that have top security clearance. That's not even all the people that are employed by this. And it also should be clear when I talk about the fact that there's 10,000 locations across the U.S. for all these intelligence organizations. That's spreading the wealth across all the states. So all the congressmen have a stake in maintaining this intelligence community, at least maintaining their businesses in their state, regardless of how effective they are. Everybody just wants a piece of the money pie. So that's another reason why these bureaucracies grow like this. In Washington, D.C. and vicinity, there are 33 building complexes related to the intelligence community since 2001. 33 different building complexes. These aren't even just buildings. They're entire complexes. And I know they're building a one campus system for that now, and I've done a video about that. But the fact is, once again, this shows that the intelligence community is spread out all over the place. Together, the 33 buildings occupy the same space as 3 Pentagons or 22 U.S. Capitol buildings, 17 million square feet total. So that's on top of all the intelligence apparatus we had before 2001. And as it turns out, this report also points out that many security and intelligence agencies do the same work, for example, that 51 federal organizations and military commands operating in 15 cities track the flow of money to and from terrorist networks. So that's just one example of redundancy. That we have security intelligence agencies that do the same work. We have 51 federal organizations and military commands operating in 15 cities whose purpose for all of those entities is to track the flow of money to and from terrorist networks. You'd think we'd just have one intelligence agency wing that handles that one thing, but no, we have to have 51 spread out across 15 cities. What do you think the odds of redundancy are? And then on top of that, of course, this costs roughly in the neighborhood of $75 billion a year. Are we getting our money's worth? $75 billion a year to catch, what, an underwear bomber and entrap 3 losers in Newburgh, New York? Doesn't seem like money well invested to me. And then on top of that, just like the rest of bureaucracy, this intelligence community generates 50,000 intelligence reports each year. 50,000. And just like all our legislation, do you think anybody reads that stuff? No, they don't have time to read it. We have all this bureaucracy that produces this massive amount of paperwork and bureaucracy. But does it do any good? Does anybody actually read the information? So once again, we have this giant apparatus that produces more bureaucracy and is not keeping us any safer. So here's a good example of more intelligence ends up making us more stupid. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.